Alrighty. What is the best status effect? Burn, sinking, poise, bleed, tremor, or charge even? Rupture would be convincing too. No, none of these. The best status, the best form of CC, is death. Let's talk about one of the most hyped up units, Index Nursefather Yi Sang. Otherwise, Poland Yi Sang, Rien Sang, etc. Man has a stupid number of nicknames now. Regardless of what you call him by, his kit is something of a nightmare to brief over, but translates quite simply to a single word: damage. So let me try my best to speedrun through. Since he's the latest ID and has 5 bloody passives, I reckon that's the best place to start. Prescript delivered on a device is as you'd expect, essentially the same as Index Don's version. You get a prescript depending on your unlock stage and get a marked target on the opposite side shared by all Index sinners. Unlock stage is tied to your Grace of the Prescript. You get Grace of the Prescript by fulfilling the Prescript. More if the main target hit is the Prescript's target. First two are as expected. Use a skill with Mark of the Prescript and hit with a Mark skill. This should comfortably get you to unlock 2 for the third Prescript. This one is where we start seeing some differences between Yi Sang and the other two's Prescripts. Rather than needing to hit with a marked S3 or Ego skill to continue getting Grace, we need to generate Procuration Hermes until it hits 9. Only then will we complete this prescript and get us immediately to unlock 3. The fourth prescript is Flavor and essentially does nothing once we get there though. Anyhow, aside from that, the usual conditions apply, including prioritizing skill freeze when we arrive at unlock 2. This helps a fair bit in this case, since skill free is one of the best at generating our procuration stacks. Anyhow, next up is the Oracle's proxy / unlock. This passive is his second always on passive that heals his SP for fulfilling the prescript and generates him Grace. As per usual, generate more Grace if we also hit the prescript's target. Now if we're at unlock 2 and prescript 3, then we generate Procuration Hermes to 9, he heals even more SP and Grace of the prescript as well. Past there, he gets Karma Consequences if he fails to do prescripts but doesn't gain them if the intention was there, but the execution otherwise became impossible due to targeting. Here is where unlock stages are outlined for Grace counts, alongside the acquisition of Shin Fates at unlock 3. A nice little bump in baseline speed and poise potency alongside count, similar to Sora Don. However, this buff also makes him do more damage against enemies with less SP than him. 1% for every SP, capping out at a 45 SP difference for 15% damage. For the third passive, we're looking at the Index Nursefather. He starts the encounter with Wound Casing Mask and replaces it with Sizzling Wound once he recovers from Stagger. Note that while he has Wound Casing Mask, the first Stagger recovery is free and happens at the end of turn. Both of these are baseline bonuses and demerits to offense and defense level, with an extra line of defense against unopposed attacks. When he reaches Sizzling Wound though, he'll start gaining burn and bleed stacks in return for more damage dealt, with base attack skills Unbreakable Coins. Essentially he's on a bit of a timer, but not the strictest one all things considered. Rather, does this even count as one? It's 2 damage at a time that clears by the end of turn. His durability is also a little lower, though not by the most. Finally, for this passive, he applies Desire for Acknowledgement Sated to Index Don if both are on the field. This is a damage buff for Prescript Mark skills, and of course more damage against the Prescript's targets. It's 15% with both conditions going. A rather okay little bonus. As for the next passive, this one is why we needed a third page. Oracle Device Caduceus. It's a very annoying passive to anyone who studies probability. Anyhow, every time he uses a coin to attack, he swaps weapons to a random weapon. We'll see how to swing this in our favor later, but let's quickly cover the 9 bloody weapons. When hacking through the ribs with a hatchet. This one is blunt damage and gains us poise on hits without cracking. When penetrating the lungs with a stiletto. This one is pierce damage and inflicts sinking on hits without cracking. These two are specifically for status application, but are otherwise the worst to get in terms of raw damage and effects. Hitting these two is a low roll. When cleaving through the shoulder and the skull with a bastard sword. This one is slash damage and deals more damage. On hits without cracking, it also gains us an offense level next turn. When punching 10 or more holes in the torso with a rapier. This one is pierce damage and deals more damage on hits. On hit without cracking, it also lowers defense level the following turn. These two are a substantial upgrade in raw power compared to the first two, and in applying buffs and debuffs for the following turn is actually quite useful. When caving in the back of the skull with a hammer, this one deals blunt damage and deals more damage. On hits without cracking, it also raises stagger threshold. Now this would be much stronger in Ruiner, but consider it solid nonetheless in moving the needle closer to free stagger damage. Actually, it's not much at all, but nonetheless. When rending the body with a greatsword, this one deals slash, more damage, and inflicts slash fragility until next turn. When boring a 20-inch hole with a lance, this one is much the same as above, but replace both parts with pierce instead. When ripping the flesh to 10,000 strips with a whip. Of course, this third one is likewise the same, but with blunt. These three are the most boring, more or less, but likely among the stronger ones to roll regardless. Finally, when lacerating through space itself with a scythe, like a certain someone. This one is Argalia's funny Giga Slash. Deals slash, more damage, and finally on hit without cracking is a guaranteed crit. As what is meant by on hit without cracking, well, all of these can be unbreakable coins. They just lose the benefit of each weapon when they're cracked, but otherwise still do the rest of the effects. And that's just the first part of this passive, there's 3 more lines to it. Second is obtaining of Procuration Hermes when using skills marked by the prescript. Means we can generate it right away, and rather, this is the first mention of its generation. We only get 1 at a time. More if we underslot. Next is the alternative wound case to Sizzling Wound pipeline, using Furioso Replica for the first time in an encounter. Finally, if he's already in Sizzling Wound state and has a Furioso Replica ready to go, he gets Indulgence in the prescripts. We'll go over that thing's effects once we actually get to Furioso though. Finally, we're at his fueled passive, Imitation of a Life. This has the usual index grace damage pipeline. More grace, more damage, and at 9 grace, a flat 20% bonus. Past there, once active, if we hit with unbreakable coins, we can generate Procuration Hermes too. The amount generated is decent. It counts both the coins that hit and the unbreakable coins that remain. As for when using Furiosa Replica, on attack end, we would gain Procuration Hermes the following turn equal to the number of coins remaining divided by 2, rounded down. Think of it similar to Hanafuda's Korzan and returning Bright Stacks, just not as aggressively. Last and most importantly, this cunt cheats out a skill free if he reaches 9 Procuration Hermes at turn end and doesn't have a skill free at turn start. He'll convert a base skill into a skill free, prioritizing the leftmost skill on the bottom row. This part is bloody filthy for many reasons. Okay, we're done with the passives. This fella is likely going to have the longest kit description just on the merits of his 4th passive and its random effects. For all of the skills coming up, please note that the coins can randomly pick between all of the stuff outlined, and the effects written are supplemented by the previously shown effects to boot. His skill 1 is enwrapped 330 times in long swathes of frozen blood. As esoteric as each of these skill names are, they didn't really yield any results when searched. Perhaps they're referencing something, otherwise they read like prescripts anyhow. This one is a 2-coiner blunt skill in Gluttony and has quite a few conditionals out the gate. First off, there's an increased chance of producing blunt weapons. These are the hatchet, hammer, and whip respectively. This chance is lowered by our Karmic Consequences stacks, however, so if we fuck up the prescripts, we're directly lowering its effectiveness. Especially because blunt weapons used will also deal more damage on top of their existing effects, meaning even the poise-based hatchet gets a little bump. Aside from that, when marked, we get clash power and more damage. Annoyingly, the mark's effect is different for every skill. Anyhow, we get the usual coin power for status, in this case, poise on self and sinking on target. The magic number here is 12. The poise makes this a little easier to keep consistent. Finally, 2 on-use conditionals. Conversion of coins into unbreakable based on unlock stage, starting with the final coin. With 2 unlock, this is only the 2nd coin. With 3, this will be both coins. This is due to being unlock stage -1 in total coins converted for this specific skill. Next is gaining poise counts. Always welcome on poise IDs, but the amount still places us in the negative with decay. As for the coins themselves, on hits we get poise, and on hit without cracking we inflict sinking. Solid enough stuff for a skill 1, all things considered. Reminder that the weapon bonuses for blunts are poise gain, stagger threshold, and blunt fragility. Moving along, skill 2 is Revel with Soundless Applause, Impale in Voiceless Sorrow. The first line is the same weapon production conditional, just focused on Pierce instead. Avoid karmic consequences to get Pierce weapons for this skill and deal more damage with Pierce weapons. Anyhow, the mark bonus this time is Final Power, and as with previous, we gain coin power based on status conditionals too. For this skill, instead of converting to unbreakables based on unlock -1, it's just flat unlock. Meaning at 1, we have the final coin, 2, we have the back 2, and 3 grants us all 3 as fully unbreakable. Solid stuff. Alongside that on use conditional is gaining poise potency rather than count, meaning this is more so the poise stim compared to the first one. For the coins themselves, the second inflicts sinking, the third gains us poise count and inflicts sinking counts when hitting without cracking. As a reminder, again, this one fishes for the stiletto, rapier, and lance respectively, granting sinking application, defense level down, and pierce fragility. Since it's a free coiner, all 3 could pop up even. Anyhow, skill 3-1, raise and laugh the blade, cry the waterfall like scents of fallen leaves. This sounds like some edgy teens haiku. Kinda fits if you divvy the words weirdly per line. That said, this thing converts itself to Furiosa Replica at turn start with enough procuration stacks. Always prioritizing the bottom row leftmost if possible in terms of S3s for conversion. Anyhow, as with the previous 3, we want to avoid karmic consequences to fetch more slash weapons here. They deal more damage as well. Guess what? When marked with the prescripts, this skill, say it with me, deals more damage. Following up is more modern ID, status coin power conditionals, and the same unlock unbreakable conversion. This time it's +1, meaning at 0 we should have 1 unbreakable coin in there regardless, which is a tad weird to think about. Regardless, it offers poise count on use and extra poise based on unlock level. On the second coin, we hit for more poise. Third, we hit for sinking, and finally, we deal more damage for every unlock stage we have reached. Critting gains us poise count, and hitting without cracking inflicts sinking count. Since this is the slash-focused one, the weapons to look out for here are the Bastard Sword, Greatsword, and Scythe. Offense level, /fragility, and a guaranteed crits, respectively. As all of these deal more damage, this skill will edge out quite a lot of damage when used. Since his kit pretty much cheats out skill 3s, we don't have to hold back on using it early, either, compared to many other S3s in the game that require just the right amount of setup to deliver their impact. As for the evade, it gains coin power from unlock, gives us poise count at the start of combat, and a poise stim on evade. If we're below X unlock though, we'll immediately turbo up to 2. For every grace of the prescripts we're missing between the unlock stage requirements, we'll gain 5 karmic consequences. This lets us turbo his kits, but at the cost of reliability. Rather, since karmic consequences are forced upon us by using this to turbo, we're absolutely going to have worse odds of generating favorable weapons when using his skills, lowering his overall damage output. That is, unless we're solely focused on the last skill in his kits. Going from 75% to 60% chance after all for a good weapon isn't the worst. Last, Furiosa Replica. Yes, the signature of the Black Silence, a 9 bloody coin attack. Showed this to most PM fans 2 years ago and they'll be foaming at the mouth. Heck, I know a lot of people who are foaming at the mouth regardless. Anyhow, to start out, this thing is an unfocused volley, meaning the first hits lands on the main target, then it'll scatter around to different targets with every coin. If marked, this thing of course deals more damage. Next, we get a bit of a weird line. If we're to increase coin power somehow, we would instead gain 5 final power and deal more damage. Functionally, this is okay and likely for strict balancing in the future, as each coin on this skill is equal to 45 raw power, if my math isn't screwing with me. In that ballpark anyhow. Basically, if you ever got a regret style buff, this skill would be broken as hell. Aside from that, this skill doesn't care for paralyze, which is surprisingly relevant these days. On top of the aforementioned conditions, this skill gains final power from status conditionals. Each final power here is worth 9 each, so ideally we squeeze out as much as possible here. Moving along, all 9 coins are unbreakable at combat starts. This is likely to avoid needing to write each coin as unbreakable individually in each line, but I digress. Every hit inflicts sinking and gains poise, but causes us to give up on gaining any procuration stacks for this turn, an important line to note for solos and underslotting. Next, on use, it gains free clash power and free poise potency alongside counts. After attack, it inflicts burn, bind, and fragile the following turn to all targets hits next turn, while consuming all Procuration Hermes. Oh, and one last note, the damn thing's final coin will always be the Scythe, meaning a guaranteed crits of slash damage. Well, and some sinking counts on hits without cracking. We can now talk about Indulgence in the prescripts. With Sizzling Wound and Furioso in hand, we get a bump in speed and apply the following effects to Furioso Replica. In addition to the on-hit sinking and poise, we get more of both. On hits, we inflict 3 sinking counts once per target, and finally, we of course deal more damage. I think that's his entire kit. Yeah, that's his entire kit. Might have been longer than Lord Honger's one, but how the bloody hell do we implement this guy? His status infliction kinda sucks, rather it's far from stable, especially with 9 bloody coins to flush out way too much count. So poison sinking? Combination of the two? What if we, as outlined prior, don't care about those two quite as much? What if we just want to supercharge Furioso? Well, let me introduce a weird combination of things, rather a very painful combo to pull off, but a far more consistent one than Maximum Bones claiming. Let's take some speed manipulation into sinking and see what we can do with it. But Eco, we don't get any payoff from sinking here. How are we supposed to pay it off? Well, there's one other bastard out there that can get us Butterfly. One guy that's particularly reliable with it to boot. Let's introduce the most important staple member here, the support of the Burning Bird engine. Welcome back, Lamp Gregor. He's actually quite important this time. The fella exists here for a few reasons. First off, he's got some okay amounts of sinking application. He's not perfectly neutral or even remotely positive, but he's just good enough for our needs. This is mainly due to the second important part of his implementation here, his ability to clash regardless of speed. When we want to hit our big fancy Furioso, we're actually going to want Yi Sang to go last. This will require us to do something very troublesome down the line that forces all of our Sinners' speed to tank hard. Regardless, since he can take clashes despite haphazard speed, he'll be a major asset when this specific moment comes. Aside from that, his Sin affinities are perfect for our needs. As for the most important role here, he holds Solemn Lament. This is our single biggest payoff this time around. Rather, it's the only sinking payoff that we've got to work with, and you'd be damn sure we want to make it work in this case. If he lands it from full, we can amass a surprising amount of Butterfly on target, though the Awakening would have us gamble between Living and the Departed. If we want to be a little more sure of things, we'll want to land the overclocked version for a guaranteed 5 on turn and 5 the turn after. Now, while he can be substituted with Linton Gregor, we want more Wrath sources here for some other support later. Regardless, toss either in and make sure they're ready to bear Solemn Lament when the time comes. Next, we need our count stabilization. There's a few choices we can make here, but I'd like to secure a solid amount of Wrath if at all possible, so we'll be looking at these 3. Butler Faust, Knights of Despair Rodya, and Hanafuda Ishmael. Now, I know what you're thinking, that this is going to be a massive pain in the ass to maintain count with, but it's still just within the realm of doable, I reckon. First off, Butler Faust provisions Wrath on her skill 3, as well as Lust and Gloom. With the skill 3 inflicting echoes of the manor, we can gamble just a little on count application. Add Hanafuda Ishmael's Corzon to this, and since the skill itself goes neutral, we can opt for some rather safe counts gambling to boot. Rather than gambling for neutrality on Corzon, we're gambling for positive counts, which is somewhat doable. Couple that with Yi Sang potentially being able to throw out of Bygone Days, and well, classic sinking is back on the menu, I suppose. This can also help make Solemn Lament less painful to boot. Rather, we can use the Awakening rather than the Corrosion if we're feeling like it. Finally, Kodya provides plenty of count, rather a disgusting amount on a single target. It's enough in her negative form to keep it plenty maintained. However, we do have some use for her positive SP form this time around as well. Also, we want access to egos if we decide to be particularly greedy about damage. Speaking of which, each of them have something worth using in terms of egos. Force specifically has 4 Calgia. While it's not stupid easy to fuel here, it's a rather consistent source of poise. That should help stabilize the team's reception of it. For Yi Sang, it'll also help him keep alive longer, despite the Sizzling Wound trying to kill him. Yes, this is a joke being 2 damage. We're looking strangely at Capote, part of our desire for some Wrath resources anyhow. This allows us to grant Yi Sang a little Wrath damage up on that Furioso, while also inflicting direct SP damage. His SP damage will play into his Shin buff, wherein he does more damage to those with lower SP. Aside from that, Tidal Elegy can help a bit, provisioning some blunt damage and sinking, of course. It will also help her clash a little better and whatnot. As for Rodya, Rien Sang is good to have if we plan on keeping her positive. It'll supplement the sinking count lost from not going negative, and finally, for the weird reason we need a lot of RAF, Indicant's Trial. On targets with 1 to 1.5 times RAF resistance, we can get a reasonable amount of damage from applying Searing Birdcage, especially if we manage to overclock it. Anyhow, these 3 should keep things reasonably healthy in terms of count and sinking application. So next we're looking at a weirder choice. Say hello to Arcorp Hongers. Why is he here, you might ask? Well, we need envy. Like, lots of envy. We need to fuel Solemn Laments, possibly Yi Sung's Great Trichiliocosm, and Rien Sang potentially, along with one more to mention later. Anyhow, we can get envy from his S2 and defense skill. His sinking application is pretty okay all things considered, especially on his S3. The funnier one is his S2 if it hits allies and avoids slamming coins into the target to keep a stack healthier. For egos, we can't afford more, so for hongers, we can mostly ignore them for the time being. Last to prepare is our Supreme Enabler. Say hello to the Wild Hunts. He's here for his affinity spread, his sinking stim in both potency and count, and otherwise insane ramp. Most importantly though, he's one of, if not the best holder of binds. This is going to be our bread and butter. You see, we're not here to awaken binds, we're here to overclock it. And well, it's bloody expensive to overclock, so we've needed to plan our ego resources very, very carefully. Alternatively, we can make this our Superbia target for significantly less effort, and focus on other ego resources. Anyhow, what does binds do for us? An overclocked binds gives us free attack power and 20 bind. This ensures that Yi Sung goes last, and can capitalize the most on the attack power up, as well as the full extent of debuffs and damage ups provided on the turn we're to let rip with Furioso. This is the combo enabler and is sitting on one of the best to make use of it. With all the fielded units out of the way, we can talk about the bench. To start off, Ryoshu doesn't have any particularly amazing IDs to use here. Rather, I am just going to slot Red Eyes and Penitence Ryoshu and take the tiny blip in SP and HP we get from her passive on the random turns we get enough envy for it. Not fantastic, but we'll take it. Now for Sinclair, we can slot Mexiclair here really easily. Otherwise, we could always shove in BL Sinclair for that final power to the slowest. It's a little easier to implement in focused encounters, but worth considering for the potential jank we can pull off here. For Musou, we've got a few choices too actually. If we're expecting Yi Sung to lose quite a bit of HP or for the fight to go a while longer, we can make use of N-Corp Musou for an extra final power. Yeah, it's real dodgy, but it's a really funny consideration. Else Kim Salt is a perfectly fine consideration, since we can guarantee Yi Sung being the slowest through binds. The 15% extra crit damage on Slash is fine, since the final hit of Furioso will always be a Scythe. At that, a critical if it hits without cracking. Next we've got Don. Just take Sora Don. It's 3 damage up for the fella and a sanity boost. Very easy and cheap to fuel too as a resonance passive. For Otis, we can just run BL Otis if we want to be lazy for execution damage. Otherwise, though harder to fuel, we can double down on the SP hates and use LCB Otis for 30% extra damage. Keep the options in mind for longer encounters and whatnot. With the team out of the way, we've got to talk play patterns, and this time around, deployment is extremely important. First off, we need to place Gregor ahead of Yi Sung. This ensures that even if they tie in speed, Gregor will always be before him. To that end, we can place Gregor in slot 1 and Yi Sung in slot 2 to ensure they're the minimum 2 allies for overclocked binds. Anyhow, from there, you can mostly soup the rest. Consider who may want some passive priority or slots, but otherwise the rest can go whenever, especially for focused affairs. Do note that a total of 4 sinners can get binded depending on resonances when executed, so perhaps shift some fellas around based on that information as well. Anyhow, for turn 1 we want a few things online immediately. We'll want 1 Pride, 1 Gloom, and 1 Gluttony. These can be achieved in quite a few ways, notably Gluttony on both Yi Sung and Honger's S1s, Pride from Gregor, Ishmael and Rodya, as well as Gloom from almost everyone. This is by far the most important thing to get right away, otherwise we'll be behind on generating procuration stacks. In regards to which, let's talk about the pain that is reaching the 9 stacks. To break down the limitations once more, at unlock 0 and no field passives, we can generate up to 2 procuration per turn. This is close to impossible to do without having 2 slots and using the skills marked by the prescript. If we have the passive, 1 marked S3 can get us to 2 even with 0 unlock. Now, if we have at least 1 unlock, we can gain 3 procuration per turn. Next, with 2 unlocked, we are allowed to fuel up to 4 per turn. This one is where we'll be spending the most time originally. To break things down even further, with the passive online we get 1 per unbreakable coin, which leaves us at the following at unlock 2. S1 generates 1, S2 generates 2, S3 generates 3. Mark of the Prescript lets us generate 1 more for each. Since we can only generate 4 per turn at unlock 2, this leaves us some very awkward breakpoints. What if we stall out a little more instead? Turn 1, get nothing by using an S1, just a marked one, so to speak. Turn 2, get 3 from an S3, mark 2 unbreakables. Turn 3, get 2 from an S2, mark 2 unbreakables. Turn 4, get 3 from an S2, mark 2 unbreakables. Oh. Now we have Furioso on turn 5 if the Prescript cooperates for every turn. Now that's surprising, so as long as we dud a turn and get the nicer half of our kits, we can get there quite quick. Dump out Furioso and repeat, right? At unlock 3, it's faster at 5 stacks available per turn even. An S3 followed by an S2 gets us right back here, whereas even if we dud 3 turns, it's 3 S1s. So functionally, every 3 to 4 turns we can just full send it, huh? Okay, but what if we want to ramp him faster than that even? Well, let's see what we can do. Let's try the evade routes. Now, due to the breakpoints, we already know that we need 3 turns at unlock 2 to get procuration to 9 for Furioso, which means the earliest we can fully get it online is 5 turns regardless. If we evade on turn 1, we generate 0 procuration but immediately speed to unlock 2. At that maximum of 4 per turn, 2 skill 2s and a skill 3 are still necessary to make this work, as skill 1 only provisions 1 unbreakable coin for the passive skill 2 when marked. Dear lord, what is this strict-ass restriction? Anyhow, this means there aren't really any shortcuts at the end of the day. Just pain. However, where this is instead relevant is unfocused encounters. If we can't even get past the first 2 unlock conditions, then we're shit out of luck anyway. The evade just lets us ignore the first 2 prescripts. Okay, with that painful portion out of the way, what can we do then? Well, for the most part, we're still at the whim of the prescripts, but there's some funny stuff we can do to mess with them. The humble underslots. While harder to recommend, we could always underslot the fella to give him more opportunities to attack and thus gather up unbreakable coin hits, and marked skill procs. Doing this pretty much guarantees 4 procuration every turn, as even 2 marked S1s gets us to this limit. Considering his damage potential, it's not the worst choice, but in the composition we're running here, it's far less than ideal. Regardless, what exactly is the game plan here? Well, at its core, it's getting off an overclocked binds. Play each sinner as you'd expect. Slot defensives on Heathcliff, Gregor, and Rodya. Hit for marked skill for Yi Sung, or otherwise slot as evade. Get a skill 1 out of Hongers for Gluttony, and slot anything with Forced. If the marked skill was not Pride, then we'll need Ishmael's counter here. Not the best thing, but it does the job. Anyhow, this turns on almost everyone's kits and lets us start stack building right away, during which we'll want to build towards the cost of an overclocked binds. 3 Lust, 6 Gloom, 3 Pride, and 5 Envy. Very doable with this setup. We want this to hit before Furioso arrives on turn 5 or 6. If we get the resources ready by turn 4, we can overclock binds there and then, meaning Furioso can get the full benefits on turn 5. Otherwise, wait till the turn before we expect Yi Sung to generate enough procuration. From there, if you happen to have resources for Solemn Lament, you can slam the Awakening if there's enough sinking counts, or otherwise slam down the Overclock with a Superbia. With 5 departed stacks, we'll get 30 extra gloom damage for every hit with Furioso, that of which adds up to quite a lot, at 270, alongside the monstrous amount of sinking procs. Nothing is remaining sane out there, and we're certainly doing a lot of damage here. Now, if we can amp gloom damage in any way further from there, that'd be nice, but for the time being, this is a pretty solid flush for sinking. On top of that, the turn after, we can still flush out more damage with Butterfly, but that's more so a bonus at this point. Turn after a Furioso, the opponent is inflicted with Free Bind and Fragile, which stretches quite the distance in finishing them off. If for some reason we then need to continue the loop, the next Furioso will be empowered by Indulgence and go harder than the previous one. Just repeat the step above and let it rip. As for boosting the damage further than the baseline mentioned there, we've got a few options. One of the easiest is to boost his poise reliability. We can do this via using a Foracalgia from Force to make him neutral overall, instead of negative thanks to Decay. Going beyond that, we can mix in Wrath-related bonuses, these being one of the following: squeezing in a Great Trichiliocosm from him, a Capote from Ishmael, or even an Indicant's Trial from Rodya. For those three though, I reckon you should consider them for Furioso 2 instead of the first one, as squeezing it in with the first one is a tad too tight. That said, you'll rarely ever need to go this high, but if you do, know the tools you can use to close things out. Regardless, thanks for listening to my deranged ramblings. Though there isn't the most functional team, at least in syncing for this guy, a few tweaks let him benefit alongside his peers if need be. Overall though, despite his lengthy and wordy as all hell kit, he's nowhere near that hard to use, and probably as close as we're getting to Roland in this game for now. Despite all of that, if you enjoyed the content, go ahead and subscribe for more in the future. Each one is appreciated and goes quite the distance. As for the rest of the announcements, well, the Ruiner Draft auction was earlier today. Vader, Kylodal, Mr. Boomy and myself all have our picks for now. I'll be recording bits of that here and there and streaming it as well. If you'd like a librarian in there, just drop your customizations in the Discord channel. Aside from that, there'll be a second pod kicking off featuring Fox's Hollow, Pug, Aqua and Meat on Saturday. In addition, you may have seen Mr. Koopsbomb starting this challenge, though the man only wants the freebies rather than the auction pieces. Nonetheless, I'll keep you guys posted on how all of that ends up going. Thanks for tuning in once again.